What if the reason we struggle with complex concepts
Yeah.
isn't actually a lack of intelligence at all?
Right, what if it's something else entirely?
Yeah, what if it's because the actual shapes of those ideas have been, intentionally hidden from us?
It really makes you rethink everything.
Totally. Today, we are looking at why picking up a pen to draw a really crooked, terrible picture of a cat might actually be one of the most profound acts of biological healing you can perform.
I mean, and human connection too, especially in a modern workplace.
Exactly. Welcome to our deep dive. Whether you are prepping for a major presentation, rethinking how you communicate with your remote team, or you're just insanely curious about how the human brain processes reality, we have an incredible journey for you today.
We really do. The core of this is a premise that takes something we usually dismiss as, well, purely utilitarian.
Like sketching a floor plan or, I don't know, a quick bar chart.
Yeah, exactly. And it elevates it into this deeply philosophical, almost medicinal practice.
So, our mission today is to explore a fascinating essay by architect Faried De Bruyns. It's titled The Mercy of the Diagram, on showing, not just telling.
It's such a great title.
It is, and we are going to look at a stack of notes and insights from De Bruyns, exploring his whole argument that visual communication, literally drawing things out, is not just some technical skill.
Far from it.
Right. We will unpack how it is actually a moral act, a biological health benefit, and ultimately the key to true tolerance. Okay, let's unpack this, because the way he arrives at this massive philosophical conclusion, it actually starts with a really quiet, everyday moment of observation.
Yeah, so picture this. De Bruyns is an architect, right? So he spends his entire life translating three-dimensional reality into two-dimensional lines.
Right.
And he was watching a young Chinese girl attempt to solve this highly complex mathematical problem.
Okay.
Now, the expectation, based on standard modern education, is that she would tackle this by manipulating abstract symbols, moving variables around on a page, isolating for X and Y.
Doing standard algebra?
Exactly. But she bypasses that entirely.
Wait, so she doesn't write a single algebraic equation?
Not one. She simply maps the problem out physically on the paper.
Wow.
She sketches diagrams, drawing little bars, blocks, partitions. She basically creates a visual architectural model of the mathematical relationships.
And that works.
Oh, perfectly.
Eh.
By doing that, the numbers just effortlessly fall into place. The solution reveals itself, not through calculation, but through vision.
That is so wild. And that observation becomes the catalyst for his whole critique of how we share knowledge, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. De Bruyns realizes that modern education has basically traded the map for the address.
Ooh, created the map for the address. I like that.
Right. We have replaced sight with symbols. We treat math, and honestly any complex subject, as a stressful test of memory rather than a natural test of vision.
Which is so backwards when you think about how our brains actually work.
Totally. To understand the mechanism behind why her approach works so well, we have to look at cognitive load.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, when you ask a student to decode a string of algebraic symbols, you are heavily taxing their working memory. It is a highly sequential, abstract process.
Like reading a foreign language.
Yes, but the human brain is evolutionarily optimized to process visual space instantly and in parallel.
So when the girl offloads those abstract relationships into a physical diagram,
She completely frees up her cognitive resources, the visual structure does all the heavy lifting.
leaving her brain to just recognize the pattern rather than painstakingly calculate it, that makes so much sense. De Bruyns actually brings in a classic book to illustrate this historical shift, doesn't he? Lancelot Hogbin's Mathematics for the Million.
Yes, such a crucial reference. Hogbin recognized that math was originally the grammar of human size and shape.
It wasn't just numbers on a blackboard.
Exactly. It was rooted in agriculture, in architecture, in navigation. Hogbin's revolutionary approach was that he refused to just hand readers a list of disembodied mathematical rules.
He actually told the story behind them.
He told the human story behind the symbols. He showed how real, tangible, desperate problems gave birth to these abstract ideas.
Because when you divorce a formula from the physical world, it was meant to measure.
You turn it into an alienating, elite, secret language.
Yeah, a perfect example of this is how we treat pi.
Oh, pi is the perfect example.
Right. Like most of us learn it as just 3.14159. It's just a sequence of numbers you have to memorize for a geometry test.
Just blind memorization.
But Hogbin traces the human struggle behind it. He walks the reader through Archimedes' painstaking efforts to map the physical reality of a curved structure, using straight-edged polygons.
It was a physical struggle.
Exactly. Archimedes was physically wrestling with the geometry of the universe because humans had a desperate practical need to build domes, to measure grain silos, and to navigate curved oceans.
And that practical need, that struggle, is what De Bruyns calls the longing.
The longing.
Yes. When we jump straight to the symbol, we teach the answer, but we completely erase the longing that gave birth to it. We deny the learner the experience of the question itself.
Wait, let me push back for a second, though. Aren't symbols like equations incredibly efficient? I mean, we can't draw a picture for everything, right? Like, especially in fields like aerospace or software engineering. We need the shorthand of algebra and code to function at a high level.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction here isn't about eliminating symbols for the experts.
Okay.
Symbols are undoubtedly the most efficient tool for the initiated, the people who already possess the underlying visual and conceptual architecture in their minds.
But I guess memorizing an equation without the visual context is like memorizing the GPS coordinates of a beautiful beach without ever actually seeing a picture of the ocean.
That is exactly it. They are profoundly alienating for the beginner. The efficiency of a symbol only exists if the person reading it has the key to decode it.
Right, so giving someone a complex formula without the visual diagram is like giving someone the punchline to a joke without ever telling them the setup.
Yes, the data is technically all there in the punchline.
But the cognitive release, that sudden aha moment where everything connects, is completely missing because the context was stripped away.
And that cognitive release requires a foundation. Hogben's entire pedagogical strategy was to stimulate visual interest and lay down that foundation before ever demanding abstract calculation.
The eye teaches what the isolated symbol cannot grasp.
Beautifully put.
So, if symbols are so alienating to the human brain, it makes sense that throughout history, anyone trying to communicate massive, paradigm-shifting ideas often had to bypass words altogether.
They absolutely had to.
De Bruyns points out that this concept of showing over telling actually has an incredibly deep, ancient spiritual precedent.
It really does. He looks at prophetic traditions and notes a specific pattern. For instance, in texts like the Quran, the divine address frequently uses the second person singular, we showed you.
We showed you, not we told you.
Exactly. The transmission of ultimate truth wasn't a lecture, it was a visual demonstration.
And we see specific examples of this sequencing everywhere in these texts, like Moses is shown his wooden staff transforming into a living serpent. Abraham is shown the kingdom of the heavens and the earth.
And the sequencing is the crucial part there. The visual, visceral proof always precedes the spoken command.
Always.
The underlying philosophy here is that the divine does not demand blind cognitive compliance to an abstract rule.
Right.
The vision is granted first to establish a foundation in reality, which then anchors the faith required to accept the words that follow.
And this isn't just in one tradition.
No, the essay connects this to Richard Maurice Buck's work, Cosmic Consciousness.
Oh, right.
Buck documented historical figures from the Buddha to Walt Whitman, and he noted a shared phenomenon among them, all this sudden, overwhelming inner light or visual clarity.
And that illumination didn't replace their subsequent teachings, right?
No, it provided the deep, undeniable conviction they needed to formulate those teachings into words.
So what does this all mean for us? Are we really equating the cognitive process of drawing a middle school math diagram to the experience of a divine prophetic revelation?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the prophets, or really any individuals experiencing a transcendent paradigm shift, implicitly understood the neurological limits of humanity.
Okay, how so?
They recognized that the human brain struggles with pure abstraction. So when they experienced their profound visions, they didn't just return and demand people trust their words.
Which makes sense. It's kind of like the difference between someone saying, trust me, this food is delicious, versus them handing you a free sample to taste for yourself. Seeing is believing.
Exactly. They anchored those transcendent truths in visual reality. They pointed to nature, they constructed highly visual parables, and they performed acts of visible wonder.
They were building cognitive bridges.
Yes, because they knew the abstraction alone would completely alienate their followers.
And this inner light, or sudden clarity of vision, it isn't just a poetic or spiritual metaphor, is it? Modern science is actually proving that this precise moment of visual clarity literally alters our biology.
It absolutely does. The source material actually takes us into the laboratory of Dr. Keltner.
The psychologist at UC Berkeley, right?
Yeah, he has spent 2 decades studying the specific emotion of awe. Keltner defines awe as the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends your current understanding of the world.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. What Keltner found is that awe actually acts as a biological lever.
Yes, a literal physical lever.
It triggers a whole cascade of physiological changes, primarily activating the vagus nerve.
Which is huge. The vagus nerve is a major component of the parasympathetic nervous system, running all the way from the brainstem down through the abdomen.
Right.
When you are confused or, cognitively overloaded by abstract, demanding text, your body often registers that as a low-level threat state.
It stresses you out.
It engages the sympathetic nervous system, your fight-or-flight response.
Wow.
But when you experience awe, the vagus nerve fires. It physically slows your heart rate, aids your digestion, and actually cools down systemic inflammation throughout the body.
I read it even decreases the perception of physical pain.
It does, and there is a massive cognitive shift that happens simultaneously in the brain's default mode network.
The default mode network, which is essentially our internal chatterbox, right?
Exactly. It's the region responsible for self-focused thoughts, ego, anxieties, and our endless to-do lists.
And during an experience of awe, that entire network just quiets down.
You get a physiological and psychological break from yourself. The body opens up to become receptive to structures larger than its own immediate concerns.
But wait, let me jump in here. Can looking at a simple bar chart or a geometric diagram really give you the same physiological reaction as staring out over the edge of the Grand Canyon?
Well, the vastness Keltner describes isn't strictly about physical size. It is about conceptual vastness. I mean, the vastness isn't physical. It's the sudden vastness of understanding where previously there was only confusion.
Ah, I see.
Awe is triggered by mystery and beauty, sure, but it is also triggered by profound recognition.
Like when things suddenly click.
Yes. When a student is staring at a dense wall of algebra, their working memory is maxed out and their stress is high. But when they map the problem visually and suddenly the architecture of reality becomes visible, they gasp.
They say, oh, I understand.
Right, and that gasp is a microdose of awe.
That is incredible.
In that fraction of a second, the brain recognizes structural coherence, signals safety, the vagus nerve fires, and the default mode network shuts off its anxious chatter. They are physically healed by the act of understanding.
So the diagram is literally a delivery system for biological health. The act of making the abstract visible actually changes the nervous system.
Which raises a really important question about the inverse of that mechanism.
What do you mean?
Well, if visual understanding physically heals us and reduces inflammation, what are we doing to ourselves and to our colleagues when we communicate poorly?
Oh, wow.
If a diagram heals, it stands to reason that relying entirely on purely abstract, demanding, textual communication might actually be inducing chronic biological stress in our workplaces.
That brings this lofty biology directly into the mud of our everyday professional lives.
It really does.
De Bruyns illustrates this by sharing a deep frustration from his own experience in an architecture office.
Oh, this part is so relatable.
Yeah, he talks about submitting complex visual drawings for review, but the examiners, the bureaucrats meant to guide and correct the work, ask for amendments using only text on standardized forms.
Yes, they refuse to make a single physical mark on the actual drawing.
It's maddening.
They write paragraphs describing spatial errors without ever engaging the space itself.
The essay actually features a brilliant analogy for this disconnect. It says correcting an architectural drawing with text alone is like a music teacher grading a student's symphony by reading the libretto, the text of the opera, without ever actually humming a single tune.
It completely denies the medium of the craft, and there's a profound arrogance to this bureaucratic method,
Definitely.
The examiner assumes that their internal mental vision of the error is universally accessible. They expect the architect to possess a blind faith in the examiner's mind, a vision the architect does not yet have.
They possess the knowledge, but they refuse to point. They refuse to show.
Exactly. To combat this sterile, stressful environment, De Bruyns introduces a concept from one of his old teachers.
Ah, yes, the golden rule of the cat.
I love this rule. It states, if you talk about a cat to a child, draw the cat. It does not matter if your drawing looks terrible, just draw it.
The psychology behind that rule is deeply tied to vulnerability, isn't it?
Very much so. Words are abstract codes that demand the listener already possesses the prior knowledge to decode them. It establishes a hierarchy.
But a drawing, even a truly terrible, crooked, disproportionate drawing levels that hierarchy.
It is a hand extended in good faith.
Yeah.
You are stepping out of the safety of abstraction and saying, I am trying to show you the fragile shape of what is in my mind.
And because that terrible drawing is physical, because it exists on the paper between the two of you, it invites collaboration.
Exactly.
The child can look at the drawing, point at the crooked tail, and say, no, the tail's longer than that.
And in that moment of mutual correction, you are both looking at a shared reality. You are no longer examiner and subject. You are co-creating the truth together.
It changes the whole dynamic.
De Bruyns uses this dynamic to fundamentally redefine the concept of tolerance. We typically treat tolerance as a passive state, right? Simply accepting that other people hold different opinions.
But De Bruyns argues that true tolerance is an active, patient, and humble pursuit. It is the willingness to illustrate your correction, to take the time to show your vision to someone who hasn't seen it yet, rather than just demanding they decode your text.
By showing, we do not diminish our knowledge or dumb down the material. We multiply it. We foster human connection through the shared vulnerability of the diagram.
You know, it reminds me of how textual criticism in the workplace is so often like throwing rocks from behind a wall.
That's a great way to put it.
You fire off a highly critical, abstract email, and you get to stay safely hidden behind your screen. You never have to engage the messy reality of the project. But drawing the cat stepping out and building something together that is stepping out from behind that wall.
Right. It says, let's build this together.
It requires infinitely more courage to be terrible at a whiteboard than it does to write a flawless, cutting email.
It is a deliberate choice to prioritize mutual understanding over personal safety.
So this essay is ultimately asking us to make a new pact with how we share information.
It is.
In our education systems, we must teach the diagrams right alongside the derivatives. We have to tell the human stories and the historical struggles behind the numbers so that mathematics and science aren't just cold, alienating abstractions.
And in our professional lives, we have to stop just sending the email.
We have to mark up the drawing. We have to get on the whiteboard. Every single line we draw for someone else is a gift of sight. And as the neurobiology of awe proves, it is literally a gift of biological health.
That is the true mercy of the diagram.
It really is.
You know, the entire scope of this material leaves me with one final thought to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we have established that extending a hand-drawn, crooked cat is what builds human connection, right?
Right.
That shared vulnerability is the exact mechanism that triggers biological awe and allows us to co-create truth. But as we move into an era where we increasingly rely on artificial intelligence to perfectly generate all our images, diagrams, and text for us instantly, what happens to our shared tolerance? If the machine draws the perfect, flawless cat for us every single time, we never have to extend that vulnerable hand. If we lose the messy human vulnerability of the bad drawing, do we also lose that tiny, profound revelation of meeting each other halfway?
If the struggle to communicate is removed, the biological reward of connection might disappear right along with it. That is a heavy but important thought.
It definitely changes how I view AI tools in the workplace.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. The next time you're trying to explain something complex, don't just send the coordinates.
Draw the map.
Let them see the ocean. Go draw a crooked cat for someone today. Until next time.